Well, hello there, folks. This is Red Dolan Live, coming to you from a friend's house. And today we are speaking to a gentleman who started off with probably very little, but got a very, very good education and became extremely, extremely successful. He retired about 10 years ago. So we're just going to start off our chat with my good friend, Tommy Wright.
Oh, well, I'm 10 years retired now.
Wow.
So I was very fond of golfing and shooting, believe it or not.
Go away.
I used to do a lot of game shooting.
What do you shoot?
Pheasant, pigeon.
Did you have an under and over or a
rabbit?
Did you have the side by side? It was an under and over.
Oh, under and over.
You can't beat them.
That I bought, would you believe it, in 1966 for 700 at the time. I think it was pounds in the beds.
At that time, it was extremely cool to have an under and over. 1966. You're fond of your little gadget. Well, that's not a gadget.
I buy the best if I can.
Yeah.
There's no point in buying rubbish and then I'll go back on it. It's like when I bought my first camera.
Right.
I bought the best at the time, and I did a lot of weddings.
Go away.
Just as a pastime, yeah.
Wow.
Some of them would pay you for it, some wouldn't.
Now, getting back to starting of your career. Now, you were born in Milltown Pass.
Yeah.
And then you came to Mullingar then after a little while.
Well, after a long time. After there was 5 of us in family.
Yeah.
My mother died very young, at 52. My father died 5 years later. So left the 5 of us with a job to do.
And who was the sort of breadwinner then? Who became?
Well, there was no real breadwinner as such because there was no jobs around, so we just had to live the best we could off what we had. So at the time we had our own farm, which we had a good garden, we had all our own vegetables. We always kept the number of cows my father always wanted in the small farm we had. And we just used what we got, and we just went on from there. I got the job with Board and Mona. I had a choice at the time in I think it was 1964, and I had a choice whether to start with the Board and Mona ESB in Rod Aaron. There was also I got a scholarship to the hotel industry.
These are all scholarships.
Yeah, those were kind of scholarships, from the vocational committee.
You went to vocational school then?
I went to vocational school in Killucan, which was, I think, roughly about 14 miles spin either way. And on a bicycle, there's no free education at the time.
There's no transport either?
No transport, no. And the bicycle, the whole way, push bike.
Wow.
And there was no other means of getting it until they put a bus on the road, I think, in 1970.
Brilliant, the big yellow one. But you finished school, you went into college.
I finished Killucan Vocational School with two of us. I won't name, but he ended up as the chief lecturer in Sligo.
Wow.
Or TC. And I had a choice of taking the job. You go to train in Dublin. But I didn't because there was no one at home, and few bob was coming in for me.
Right.
So I went to Dublin and I couldn't just afford to pay my flat, as they called it at the time.
Yeah.
But my sister was working in Dublin. She got a job in Dublin with cousins of ours, and she stayed there in a small bedsitter in South Circular Road, just off South Circular Road. And every time I go to Dublin to see her, I'd stay with her, But I served my apprenticeship with Board and Mona then, and they had it at the time. The apprenticeship was run under the auspices of the I can't think.
Was it Anco?
Anco.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anco ran the course up until 1972, I think.
Right.
And then they went FOSS. But FOSS never produced the same as Board and Mona did during the Anco years.
And so you headed out to Board and Mona then.
I cycled again.
Were you out there cutting turf or what were you?
No, I wasn't. I started my apprenticeship. I didn't know which field to go on. My father wanted me to join him in the building. He was a small builder.
Right.
Would I go on do some building work with him in carpentry before he died? And they said, I will if you buy a good cement mixer and a little truck.
Right.
He said, I'm not going to go on a bicycle or push a horse and cart.
Yeah, or mix
so
cement.
When he could afford it again. So poor man died then after. So I finished my, in Derry Green, I did my apprenticeship for Board and Mona. I was selected then out of the Board de Mona head office to be a design engineer draftsman.
Wow.
So that was my first breakthrough in the
Now,
management world.
at college, did you like drafts at that, or not college, but at Killucan? Did you do anything like technical drawing at that time?
I did indeed.
Yeah.
And in Killucan we had a very good teacher, Joe Stewart. Joe, he was a Cork man, but he lived in Mullingar, and he married in Mullingar.
Yeah.
Sorry, in Killucan. And he was a great teacher. He taught us drawing and woodwork.
And did you like the woodwork?
Oh yeah, I was sure all the Wrights are all carpenters.
That's right, yeah.
He's got his name Wright. Were Freemasons,
Right,
and they originally started in Malta.
right.
The name Wright came there because Wright, I think, stands for Freemason. There's different types of Wrights. There's Wrights, you can spell them in 4 different ways.
Right.
You can W-R-I-G-H-T, Wright, which is my name. R-I-G-H-T, which is right or wrong. W-R-I-T is to write a letter. And R-T-I-E is church right.
All right.
You're making decisions to the church. So you had 4 different Wrights. Then you had N Wright, Hall Wright, Gag Wright, all the different Wrights down and down who were members of the trade, of the masonry trade. And when they came from Malta, they went to north of England, Scotland, and from Scotland then to Tyrone in Northern Ireland. And that's where they started when they came to Northern Ireland. And 2 families split up there. One went to Offaly, and the other family stayed in Tyrone.
Oh.
And even today, you'll find that there's a number of car service garages in Northern Ireland under Wright's banner, W-R-I-G-H-T-S.
Fantastic.
And that's the same, yeah. Now, I wouldn't have known this only that my wife Mary had done the connection of the family tree. Yeah. And they have the Wright family and of her side family, which was Burns, and she's from Wexford.
Yeah.
So she did a tree of the whole of it, and it takes hours to go through, but it's all the information back to, I think it was 1885.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So was your wife involved in the business at that time?
No, she wasn't. No.
Oh.
No, what happened, my amazing thing now, the way it happened, I was working with Board de Mona in Pembroke Street in Dublin, 2832 Pembroke Street, just off Hatch Street there, and Stephen's Green. And I used to go for my lunch at the Grey Door restaurant in just across from Pembroke Street.
Right.
And I met a few people there that I liked, and there was one particular fellow said, he said, "Did you see the ad in the paper?" I said, "For what?" He said, they're looking for draftsmen," he says, in the ESB, and he says, and somewhere else. And I said, "Oh," he said, "I get it for you." He said, "I found it." He was a great friend of mine, and I applied for the job, and I got the job under the company called Matter and Platt, who were fire engineering.
So this is really the beginning of...
Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought when I saw the fire experts, companies,
yeah.
I thought I was going to work on fire brigades.
Get the big hat and drive a red.
But it wasn't that at all. I was going to do design for sprinkler installations. Never heard of one in my life before. So I took the job with them because I was at that time I was with ESP, believe it or not. I worked there for a year until I got this job, and
you continued on from there.
When I got the ad paper, I went to took the job. But the job meant training in Manchester, and there's another guy who came with me from Dublin, Adrian Roulier. His father was the manager of the Bank of Ireland in Chicor.
Right.
And I got to know him, but he came to Manchester. He wasn't successful in his testing and his what he was asked to do. So he left and went back to his civil engineering design. I stayed with the man. I was very interested in what they were doing, and the guy that I worked with in Dublin was in charge of the training section for Matter and Platt. Now Matter and Platt, Sir Matter was a first cousin of the Windsor.
My God.
And the Queen, and she used to visit the works every year.
Yeah.
And I just had a photograph one time of me shaking hands with her.
Go away.
Of Queen Elizabeth. It was really nice. I don't know where I went. When I moved house, I think I lost it somewhere. But they were a great company, and
They trained you up, like.
They trained me up in their field, in the field of fire protection engineering, which a lot of people don't realise what it is. But for the sprinkler system as it is today, very few factories or buildings of any kind are burned to the ground if they have good proper sprinkler system working. In Dublin, the first big fire they had in Dublin was, I think it was in 1890 or 1890, I think it was around that time, the Hop store in James's Street went on fire. And it did have a sprinkler system that was installed, I believe, around all the guys that worked there and that, a bit of history, that the Hop store went on fire because the sprinkler system didn't operate properly. And they're wondering why it went on fire. Why did the sprinkler system extinguish the fire? And I got the job. They sent for me, said you go down and examine the whole design of the business in James Street.
This now, you says 1885, but I don't think it was. It must have been in the 70s or 60s that fire went then.
Oh, sorry, that would have been it. But the installation of the sprinkler system was in 18.
That was the beginning of the. Oh, right. The system was there since the 18.
Correct.
God, and then they sent you down to check it out.
Check it out, yeah.
Right.
And it hadn't changed that much because at that time when it was installed, there's only one company in the world, and that was Matter and Platt. Okay. And they stayed in control of the world sprinkler system design and supply for, I suppose, the best part of 100 years, I'd say.
Go away.
And when I joined Matter and Platt, I didn't know who they were, I didn't really have to know.
Yeah.
But I got done very well there. I was delighted to get it. There was a guy working in Matter and Platt who was from around Milltown Pass, and he looked for me one day and the two of us became great friends. But when I went to Manchester for my second term, I was called up one day from the lecture hall. Garrett said, "You want as reception?" So I thought, my God, I got to get the sack. What did I do wrong? So I went up to reception and I said, "This is Tommy Wright." I said, "Is someone looking for me?" "Oh yes, hold on, Mr. Wright. We'll find the man." So this man came out and he says, Tommy Wright, straight. And I said, "Yes, that's me." He says, "My name is Lynham." He says, "Brian Lynham." He says, "My mother," he says, "is from Enniscoffey, Gabriel." And he said, "I want to congratulate you and thank you for bringing my aunt to Mass when her husband died." And he says, we never forget it. Well, I said, "Thanks very much." And he says, "I'm the chief accountant in the company and I'll be looking after you." And I said, "Well, I don't want anything. I'm happy enough. We know, but we look after you." Wasn't that amazing?
Absolutely amazing.
And that man, I got to know him very well. Brian, he used to come home on holidays then, he'd come visit us, and his own family, of course. And his father was a shepherd, believe it or not, out on the Welsh Alps, Welsh boglands.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was there, a shepherd, I imagine.
So you've done a great job for Matter and Platt, you were telling me. They sent you to Guinness's, did they?
They asked me would I go, would I find out why it happened, what caused the fire.
Right.
Now, what the cause of the fire, I never could establish why, but when it did start, the system switches off, but it wouldn't. What happened was, I'll explain to you, the sprinkler systems throughout Ireland were based on air and water. Mm-hmm. So during the cold periods in Ireland, back in the 40s, 50s, that would change that much since, I suppose. But the East Coast was the only place we got damage from sprinkler or from freezing. As you know, it goes below -7 before it starts to expand. If you look at the graph on water, and it goes down -1, 10, 9, 7, 8, down to -7. And at -7, it moves out and it enlarges the particles of the water, and it's double the size of the original. And that's how it bursts, whatever, because the tractors or pipes or whatever, water controls any system. So you have to be aware of that. When I examined the system, the valve sets and the pumps and all were working perfect. They were remote from the fire, but they were working perfect. But when I got a look at pipework, the pipework was, the system was being changed in October and removed all the water from the system and filled it with air. Now it was so designed that if there was a fire condition anywhere in the premises, that the water would hit the fire within 8 seconds.
Okay.
And that was a hydraulic design detail you had to provide and prove, which we were able to do. So that when the fire occurred, that happened. Then in March, then they would drain the air out of it and fill it with water. And that would go on then until the end of October.
Now, we're not giving away any secrets here in this video.
No
This is usual information.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not giving away any trade secrets.
No.
Okay, that's good.
No.
Decimalisation, you were in the middle of it, and I believe there was...
We were indeed.
Lads jumped out through windows that they couldn't deal with it.
Yes, amazing thing though. I remember in 1969, 1971, when I was in Manchester Park Works, Manchester Oldham, a lot of the draftsmen at that time, matter of fact, because they were worldwide, had something over 100 draftsmen that were covering the world. I mean, that's how I started off. The first job I got was in Eritrea and Africa. That was the first one I got to commission.
You're serious?
Oh no, that's the first one. I went on my own. And most of the travelling I did on my own. And you're landing in the airport in Nairobi somewhere at 3 o'clock in the morning. I know when there's not one white man on yourself and they're looking at you. What are you doing here? And you've got a suitcase in one hand and a toolbox in the other with control gear in it, you know. And I remember landing one morning at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in Nairobi. Or whether it could be, or 3 hours, one or the other. Anyway, I did about 8 or 9 companies in Africa, South Africa. And I landed at the airport, got my stuff up and walked into the reception, the airport. And there's a guy there to pick me up, which he did. You know, but as I walked in toward the outlet, about 15 young kids to find out why it happened.
So from Manchester then, you got this great job.
Well, Manchester was only 2 days every month.
Right.
Until they were happy that I was good enough to do and act as the commissioned engineer.
Okay.
Which I did because I had the background. I had electrical and mechanical and everything, hydraulics, pneumatics, and all came in under the one umbrella. They never had a particular booklet issued on it, except for the insurance companies, who would be the then underwriters. And the largest underwriter in the world is in America, called Factory Mutual Insurances. And they would be massive. They would cover the world insurance, and they would be the government body to control sprinkler systems. And run me, sorry, money. And I said, I had no money as such to give him.
The real money, yeah.
But it's a frightening experience to go through.
God.
And it was the biggest fright I got. But I got a fright coming home from Holland.
Yeah.
I was into Warsaw. And I was told, be careful that, they were dangerous.
Yeah.
You could lose your passport or your money very quick. But as I approached the entrance to the airport lounge, I saw those two fellas watching me. Now, looking up on how quick I was, to be able to divert my walking to a sharp right, and I cleared a wall, which was 4 foot high, that I would never do in the best time with a ladder. How I got over the wall, I don't know.
Right.
But I'll never forget it.
But you got away.
I got away.
What is that? Bungalow Bliss?
Bungalow Bliss. Yeah, well, Bungalow Bliss is nothing to do with me, but I started doing small design work from head office in Dublin for the morning because we wouldn't have a full day's work, and they didn't have a full day's work. I don't like saying.
Oh, you didn't want to be skiving off. You wanted to be busy.
Yeah, I do. I like to be busy. And there was a fella there who was a senior draftsman, and he had so much work on. He said, "Look, can you take some of this building extension?" I said, "Of course," because he knew that I was fond of building, and I was more or less that the Wrights were all carpenters and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I did. So I gave him a handout. I did several houses around Newbridge because he came from Newbridge. An extension, and it was the year that Big Bungalow Bliss more or less introduced or approved of. And I wasn't competing against Bungalow Bliss at all. It's just that it happened at that particular time. Now the Great Fire of London, as we know.
The Great Fire of London. You weren't on that one, no?
No, not the Great Fire of London. 1860.
Yeah.
It went on fire, and it burned. A square mile of London was burned to the ground. At that time in 1860, all the buildings were nearly timber, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a hotel recently, looking around me, and if I never had a match, because it was gone, if it gets going fire, they'll never control it. But very important little things that they have to look out for when you are the owner or supplier of Smith Systems, and what you have to do. It sounds simple, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do it right, you don't even know you're at. You know. Now, all the places I covered, all over Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, everywhere I went, I did mint in Malta, where the Wright started, and particularly interested in that. But they have the biggest mint in the world, where they produce paper money in 2-ton lots on pallets. And you're working as a contractor outside, and I had 5 fellas from Milltown Pass and Roger Bridge working there.
Right.
And I was told, if they stop to look at the money, sack them.
Really?
Yeah, don't let them near the place. We don't. So I told the lad, I said, don't, if you see money coming in a pallet around Thursday, don't look, I turn the other way. But one fellow was so nosy, he had what he had to see. He wanted to see, nearly came to the second truck, or the pallet truck, and I had to give it him and send him home. Amazing. That's a fact. But Smurfit in Ireland, Smurfit started a small printing works in Smurfit in Dublin.
Yeah.
And he ran it up to about, I suppose, 1984 or so. And it went back then to Malta.
Oh, right.
But Malta's a lovely island if you're ever on it.
Oh, it's beautiful. I was there a few times.
Yeah, a lot of the retired business people and sports people living there.
So tell us, after all that business and all, what would you recommend to anyone who's starting in business now?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
It's something that you wouldn't realise when you're part of it. But as I look back now and see what I did in the past, and the advice I got, some of it was very good, some of it mostly good. It depended an awful lot on the teachers you had, your lecturers in school, an awful lot. And I must say that Killucan, why did I go to Killucan? My father said, I want you, if you're going to go to the tech, don't want you to go to Mullingar, I want you to go to Killucan.
Right.
And I said, why is that? Well, he said, there are too many young ones in there, he said, to distract you. He said, you go to Killucan. So that was the end of that. So I went to Killucan. At that time, you did an exam for the entry to the vocational school.
Right.
And I did the exam for that, and I got second in the county. I was getting £25 of a grant every year. It was a total of 50. I was getting 25. 25. Now, I don't know someone can verify that, but it's around that at the time.
But that was a great incentive.
It was, yeah. It was. And I enjoyed every bit of Killucan. I was only supposed to go to 2 year session. But the other fellow that was with me, Garrod O'Kane, let's just say his name as a Gaeilge.
Yeah.
And he ended up the chief lecturer in Sligo and TC.
Absolutely. Well, it's like everything, and I say it myself, in every town, we have everything in every town. It's just a case of finding out them people that you want to connect with in your town.
Correct.
Because I feel that when you go away, you find all them people that are in your town, right?
Yeah.
In far away, but they're still in your town, in your own mind, because you geez, that man reminds me of that man. So I always say, everyone that you need is in your town or surrounding areas, because Ireland is so a diverse country.
Yeah.
We have so diverse people as well. We have everything, I feel, in the town and
Absolutely.
the country.
But one of the reasons, the main reason why I built the factory in Mullingar was for personnel, people, getting people to work. Where I was working from in Gaybrook, Lemon Grove, there was nowhere to go to have a cup of coffee. You had to go to either. There's nowhere in Milltown Pass as such, really. So you go to Mullingar or Kinnegad or Killucan if you want to, or if you had time to go. It took an hour and a half off your working time.
Exactly.
So we decided we'd move to Mullingar where workers were more available, and they'd come into the office and go for half an hour for a coffee break. That's what they wanted. So that was the reason. Without a doubt that we moved to Mullingar.
And tell me, were you big into cars?
Motor cars, I like cars, obviously did. I must show you a replica of a car I had in 1980.
Yeah.
It was a Renault Fuego. I had 17 consecutive Renaults.
Oh.
Then I changed to Mercedes, and I more or less stayed with them. I went back again to the bigger Renault, and I've changed then from Mercedes, and I stayed with them up to.
You had a Range Rover at one stage as well.
I had a Range Rover. I had two of them actually. I thought they were a great wagon. I liked them. They're great for driving and long distance and plenty of power.
But you're back in the Renault again.
Pardon?
You're back in the Renault again.
I'm back in the Renault again. Yeah, there's all this. It's a nice car, but it wouldn't be a patch of the Range Rover.
No, different machine altogether.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, look, Tommy, thanks.
Because there was clients all over Ireland, all north and south. That wanted someone local to look after the system. So I took on the job of doing it, and I employed one or two fellas, and we did very well from there.
And when did Mary join the company then?
Well, and the company, she would have joined us in around 1989, 1990.
Oh, right.
she was working with O'Brien Limited up to that, and she had done, I think, something like 16 years with him.
Very good.
And then she left and started doing her accounts.
But as they say, behind every man there's a great woman.
Well, she certainly worked hard at anything she undertakes to do. She does it well. She did some courses in Athlone, in accountancy, and she did courses in law. So she did both of them, and then Belfast University, she passed out in law, Bachelor of Law.
Amazing.
Yeah, and she also has a Bachelor of Commerce, same as Ted. That's my second son.
You have 3 sons.
Yeah, Alan is the eldest son, and he's 52 now, believe it or not. You know,
God, doesn't look
50, 52, I think. I'm useless at dates, you know, if I make a mistake.
But not to worry, no.
And then Ted came along 3 or 4 years later, and there's a lapse of about 15 years, I think, between Ted and Dean. Ted did a Bachelor of Science in UCD, and was selected for special application in the Bank of Ireland. And he worked there, and he said, then he saw how well we were doing in the Mullingar.
Right.
Actually, Miltown passed at that time.
Yeah.
And he said, no, could he work with us? Because Alan had already started with us, and I was giving Alan the information in relation to fire pumps and their controls and the whole system as such.
Okay.
So he liked it. He loved going around, and we travelled, I suppose, half the world.
Yourself and Alan?
Myself and Alan, yeah.
Right.
I took Alan where I needed him.
Yeah.
I took him and I showed him what we were doing, what we were done. And from Dominican Republic in the south of America, we did it right up into the borders. Did all of Europe. We could get Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, of course, Ireland, England, and Scotland, and all that. We looked after most of that. We were the only qualified people at the time. So it went very well for us there, you know, and we just grew and grew and grew. And I kept bringing in trade, the bright trade from the Middle East,
Wow.
from Dubai, Abu Dhabi, you know, all the other countries, Oman, Iraq, but before the big trouble started. But the main purpose I had for to setting up the proper, the commissioning and installation was in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland,
Right.
because they couldn't get anyone to travel from England into Northern Ireland during the Troubles.
Ah.
That was during the 80s. So anyone that came up, which is very important if you can understand, there was a lot of places that were very vulnerable to fire.
Correct, yeah.
So there was parts of the system that could isolate the system, and that's something that I had to go around and show those people how to do.
Amazing.
So that was during the 1980s and into the 1990s.
And so, as I say, you covered the whole world. And
I did. We worked it out. Mary worked out for us. We did 91 countries.
91 countries.
91
covered.
countries, yeah.
And you got business in most of them?
Oh, anywhere I was mostly business. Now, what I would do was, when I come home, I even did a shopping centre in Perth in Australia. The Matter and Platt had started and didn't finish.
Right.
And I went and I just redesigned it and done the inspection. That's where I did my training for flying.
Oh.
So I used to use flying was my favourite hobby. You often heard of the Wright brothers.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't copying them. It was just accidental that I became a pilot. So I used to go to Australia maybe sometimes twice a year and do training. And then back to Western and Dublin and finish it off.
And then a bit of business as well.
And I bought a helicopter and I had it for 17 years.
Really?
Yeah.
So you've all your licenses and the whole lot at that
I
time?
had at the time, yeah. The hardest thing to get once I got very, very bad sickening. I got cancer, and lucky enough, it got cured better. A big operation, and at that stage, I was finished. My flying days were finished. You couldn't get insurance to cover you with that sort of sickness. So,
and you're a counsellor as well?
I did. I joined the council in 1980, I think, and from there, I was a total of 13 years in the council. It was an extended term. I was chairman of the Westmeath County Council. I was also on 7 different committees in the town. That's the I still was working from Lemon Grove and Cape Brook, or in our own farm where I built a house. I just went on and on and on.
For all our friends looking in, this is the great friend, Tommy Wright, and we're delighted to chat to him. So if you have a story for us, folks, and you want us to call to your house, we can do that. So for myself and Tommy Wright, thanks for looking in, and bye for now.